that vocabulary because I want to build an application, and my focus is mainly on that my application rather than building a vocabulary. Now, why I'm saying that it is all, I mean, whether we should build immediately or we should reuse or we should use whatever already available. What is already available is always advisable, given that fact that this building ontology, the construction of ontologies, or here you can see the knowledge artifacts, or also recently we are calling it even the semantic artifact, is becoming a very popular, and we are doing some kind of joint work in Europe. So basically there we are referring it semantic artifact, but all these are kind of synonymous terms that the vocabularies that I was talking about it few minutes ago. So the thing is that this construction of these vocabularies itself is an, costly affair. In a sense, it's very expensive. In a sense, in terms of the time, in terms of the kind of human resource you need, because you know that you are talking about an vocabulary, and that vocabulary is more domain specific. So if I am asked to build an ontology to work with a particular small application in material science, I don't think that I would be able to build it in a week. It's impossible because my background is not material science. That's the first thing. Second thing is that I need to have also the background to have that, I mean, the technological background. It's not just the domain expertise, but you need also the technological expertise. Now, if you have that and you are building an application and you know that you can afford to spend for your human resource and the domain experts, it's fine, you go ahead for it. But the thing is that it's always advisable that if something is already available, always it's better to start it, because of the very reason is that is it's very expensive. Now, another thing is that it is good news is that basically that there are a lot of ontologies are already there. People, even though quite it was quite late, but still people start realizing that they started realizing that this ontology is an important resource and it can add value to our applications. Basically when we talk about the semantic applications, okay, or semantic web applications, whatever you say. So given that, so there are a lot of ontologies are already available, lot of vocabularies are already available, and when I'm talking about these ontologies or vocabularies, I'm basically mainly focusing on this the formal one. But even then also, as I said, the taxonomy and all that, thesaurus and all, which are considered mainly the kind of semi formal, I mean, they are not really machine processable in that way. uh, so that those are also available, but beside that, these are which are highly formal ontologies that also available, and there are various repositories. It's similar like your institutional repositories, that where I think all of us aware about that institutional repositories, that where we dump our own articles, or maybe say for example we use Google search engine to retrieve the scientific literature. So similarly, for ontologies, there are dedicated repositories are built. There are dedicated libraries and registries are built, where people go and register their ontology if they have done anything, or they deposit into those repositories. And there are many repositories are there. For example, like Bioportal, it is highly specialized for biomedical domain. And then you have this is more domain independent, that is linked open vocabulary. And these numbers are actually pointing to the number of vocabulary, I mean ontologies are available in those repositories. Like in Bioportal, there are right now 894 ontologies are there. In linked open vocabulary 750, and so forth. And there are these repositories, some of them highly domain specific, some of them are domain independent. Like say for example, Agroportal also is highly domain specific, that is agricultural or food and agriculture related resources, the ontologies, if you want to look for, or if you are searching for, then this is the place where you can find out. This is another one, Biblioportal, that where you get more common, but it's not really very popular. Very few ontologies are so far added, only 32. because it's not that popular. This is one of the most popular one, and then there is another one which I didn't add into this list, that is called Bartok, which has like almost like 3000 plus 3200 plus vocabularies, but that includes not only the ontologies, but it also includes the like term list, taxonomies and all. So that's why I didn't add that in this list. So anyway, so given that there are many repositories and given that there are many ontologies are available, this is something, it's a good news, but again, you know that finding things are not so easy. So anyway, we'll get back to this, the different issues related to this finding, basically in terms of ontologies. The another thing, that point is like, cumbersome to identify the ontologies we need and manage there. So here is the one thing. Now, when we talk about that, okay, there are a lot of vocabularies, okay. The problem is that, it's not so easy to bring out which would be very relevant or would be much relevant to my application. Okay, so it's similar like finding your research article, because when you know that we are all familiar with Google search engine. When we look for an article, we know that how much time we spend in finding the right article, right? So is the similar case here also, that when we want to find out the best suitable one, or the right ontology for my application, this becomes a real challenge. It's a real issue, because even though I show you that here a lot of the different repositories, you may find there are a lot of overlapping are there for the same object. And not only that, more importantly is that for the similar domain or for the same domain, you will find multiple ontologies, and there finding the right one for your application is really becoming, it's really a challenge. Okay, and this is where now the thing is that, like any data, like as I gave one example for your research scientific articles, these knowledge artifacts or the ontologies basically need to be fair. That means, as I gave that background, that we should be able to find them, we should be able to access them, we should be able to it should be interoperable. Okay, those resources should be interoperable, and they should be also reusable. And what this stands for, I will come to the next, I will come to that in the next slide. Just before that, I would like to emphasize further on that this FAIR principle, which I think some of you are already aware about it. This is a principle that there are 15 principles which talk about that how your data to be fair, that is findable, accessible, interoperable and reusable. And this basically again establish the importance of using the standard vocabularies or ontologies to describe fair data and to facilitate interoperability and reuse. In a sense that when we, because here we are considering ontology also as a data, like any data, because now I think all of us here are familiar with the research data management, right? There are a lot of emphasis at the present days we see research data management. Those are basically belong to this academia, right? But again, outside of that also, in a very broader sense, we are again familiar with this the any data, whether it is research data or any data, like say for example your transportation data, or it can be the traffic signal data, any data, it has to be fair. In a sense, that data has to be findable, they should be accessible, they should be interoperable, and they should be reusable. And towards that, there are 15 principles are already developed, that how your data should be described in a way so that it becomes a fair data. The same thing here also, if we consider this ontology as a data, and very much it's a data, because remember that with ontology itself you cannot do much things, because you need it as an input to your application, so that, because that ontology acts as an kind of intelligent object, because that's why we are saying that also it is as a knowledge artifact, because it has the knowledge. Okay, but with that itself you cannot do anything, you use it as a data inside your whole application, right? So in this case, so this is important that like the any other data that we were talking about, like traffic signal data and so forth, these ontologies also should be described with a vocabulary, with a standard vocabularies, so that we can identify. Now why we are talking about that we need a standard vocabulary to make these knowledge artifacts as fair data? Because you know that, again, that that for all these data, that whatever we talk about, there are different metadata vocabularies are already there. For example, one of the most popular one nowadays we are using, most people use, that is DCAT, right? Data cataloging purposes, so we use that DCAT. But then there are many other vocabularies are already there, like say for example DataCite, DataCube, like that. There are multiple vocabularies are available for creating or for describing your data. But since knowledge artifacts are very different kind of objects, even though we are telling it broadly it's a data, but it's not the data like you have the traffic signal data, or you have the data like say COVID-19 data, like active cases, disease, and all so many things, right? So it's also a data, but it's a very different type of data. Anyway, coming before we further discuss on that aspects, let us first little understand further that the fear. So here that fear is basically, we are talking about, as we said, F stands for findable. So here the thing is that we should be able to search, okay, we should be able to identify them, but then they should be accessible. The access can be through the APIs, like, and we are all familiar here with these APIs, so there is nothing to say about it. But then there is another one, that is the way, another way we can access also, that is like by providing the SPARQL endpoint. And this is something very special about these knowledge artifacts. If we want to give access to the data, we can actually give that access to the data, I mean that our graph data basically here, through the SPARQL endpoint. Now, what is graph? I believe that again you got it from the previous sessions, so I'm not getting into, because I think yesterday you had a session on knowledge graph, so I'm not getting into that. So I'm sure that you are by now familiar, but if you have any question, please do not hesitate to ask me on that. So this is the way that we can give access to our data, that is the knowledge artifacts, whether it is the only the ontology, or whether it is the knowledge base or the knowledge graph itself, that where you don't have only just the ontology, but you have also the real data, the data about the entities. Okay, so anything that you have, you can give access. Sorry, there is a, okay, so you can give access to your data. Now next thing is that interoperability. This is something very important, and that's what we will see in the following slides, that some places will see that how this interoperability becomes an important thing. Because you know that this two objects, like it can be like between two human or two machine, they cannot talk to each other unless they understand the same language, unless they speak the same language, right? So if we don't, two person don't speak the same language, they will not be able to communicate, they will not be able to exchange the information. So the important thing is that when we talk about this fairness of the data, including the knowledge artifact, the important thing is that it has to be interoperable, because the different system will have the data, right? And they, if they describe their data using different kind of vocabularies, then it will become a problem, because the system will not be able to communicate between themselves, right? Then another thing is the reusable, which is the, I mean, the most important thing here. As at the beginning I started with the reusability, like I said that I'm not a material science scientist, right? So I'm not the expert in that area, But now I want to build some application, okay? And for that I need an ontology. So is the question is that whether I will start building this vocabulary or this ontology my own, okay, or I will use the existing one. So here is the question, that the reusability. So reusability is the one that anything that is available, we should or we must use it as much as possible, whether it is the for my particular application goal, or for if I am building another vocabulary, even say for example, okay, whatever the ontology is available, you are not satisfied with that, it's fine, it may possible, because that ontology previously was built, maybe built with a very specific goal, it may not fit to your own requirement or application goal, so you may need to change it. But the thing is that you need to alter it rather than building it from the scratch. So the reusability, when it comes, it has multiple aspects to think of it, that how we can make something as reusable. And here we are emphasizing that when we talk about the knowledge artifact, basically we say that we should try to reuse the knowledge artifact as much as possible. Now, in this current study that today that I'm discussing, actually is our research work that we did, I mean last couple of years we are building, and even still also we are building it. We started in 2015. I will show you the history, that map that we have. But anyway, so that goal, that initially that what we had, that goal, that basically we are interested in studying the ontology metadata practices to discuss and provide recommendations. Because as I said, that we need to make the knowledge artifacts or the ontologies fair. So it is important that we need a vocabulary to describe them, so that when I need an ontology for my own purpose, I would be able to, or I will be able to find it easily. Okay. So for that, so in this study, we were mainly interested in studying this ontology, existing ontology metadata practices, and we also wanted to provide a recommendation, so that basically the everybody means here the ontology developers and the ontology repositories, they adopt this practice, whatever we come out, that they adopt it. Okay. And so here the this talk outline is I will provide you little further background, then we will talk about the ontology metadata practices, that is state of the art analysis, then we will talk about some issues, and then we will talk about our own research that we produced, that is called metadata for ontology description and publication, and we will also give you some update of that project. So this is the history of this metadata ontology, which you can say that it's an ontology about ontologies. Okay, so this MOD can be treated as an ontology of ontologies. That means you have so many ontologies. Now MOD can be considered is an one single ontology for multiple ontologies, in a sense that it will capture the information, or it will allow us to describe and capture the information about all the ontologies are out there. Okay, so we can create a knowledge base of the ontologies itself. Okay, so that was our primary goal. And so we started this work first in ISI in 2014, and then we published in 2015 this MOD 1.0, and then we in 2016 it became a kind of joint project between ISI and the LIRM lab of University of Montpellier, France. And so this basically a kind of artificial intelligence lab. And then in 2017 we published this jointly MOD 1.2, and it became a kind of task group activity under the VSSIG of RDA. This is Research Data Alliance. I think some of you may know already, but otherwise you can also Google it. It's a basically a kind of group that is supported by European Commission, and it's like a almost like all the countries that the participants of these RDAs are from various countries, including India. So a lot of people are involved in this. Basically, their goal is basically to further, uh, push this data cataloging and managing the data, making this data as fair, and all these stuff. So you can find out more about this RDA in Google. It's called Research Data Alliance. Okay. Now in 2018, we published this MOD 1.4, and that's where that we started. But I will give you the further details, the status at the end of this presentation. Now, yeah. So in doing this work, doing this study, so we were actually, because any study cannot start without looking at what is already there or what has been done, what is the state of that. So we did some interesting study, and you will see the result that which are quite interesting. And I think some of us who already are, are kind of ontology developers, and we'll find that where we actually stand. Okay. So here we did three different kind of studies. One is that we did the studies of like analysis of the uses of metadata vocabularies in various ontology libraries and repositories. The examples that I gave of the different repositories like BioPortal or BiblioPortal or MMI, their practices we studied. Then in study 2, we did also the study of the, the perspective of the ontology developers, what the ontologies developers they themselves do. Like say for example, when I created, say for example, we created that code on COVID-19 ontology, right? Or even we created other institutional ontology and many such. Now the thing is that when we publish our ontology, what we do we provide some kind of data, metadata about our ontology or not? So that was our main goal of this study too, and where we studied with like some 805 ontologies we took as a kind of sample study, and I will share with you that result. And then of course we did a kind of survey research, so where we asked the, the yeah, so the sorry, here what we did basically in this study, we basically conducted this all these kind of metadata vocabularies that are there. Say for example, like Dublin core, I think all of us here familiar with this Dublin core metadata, right? Or Dublin core metadata terms, or say for example another one which most of us use, that is FOP, friend of a friend. Like that there are many several ontology, sorry, many metadata vocabularies are available. So we wanted to study that also and see that whether we can reach to, or we can by extracting the result from all these studies, whether we can finally produce a kind of recommendation which can be used to describe the knowledge artifacts as a fair data. Okay. So the first thing that was very interesting, that where we studied the 13 repositories, and we found that almost all the repositories, none of them actually use any standard metadata elements to describe their ontologies in their repositories. Say for example, except the BioPortal, all this, like, here that we have like MMI, none of them they followed any standard vocabulary like Dublin core or similar like that other vocabularies. Instead what they did, they created their own descriptors to describe their ontologies. It is similar like I am publishing my own article, and I decide what elements I will create, and I will create to describe my research article. Or it is like similar like my institute decides what elements they need to describe their own scientific articles, and that decision of course they can take, but they take that decision in a sense, they themselves create that descriptors instead of looking at something which is already available, instead of reusing something which is available or which is available as a standard. But again, we know that to achieve the interoperability, we need to follow the standard. We cannot have our own, kind of native thing, so that we will not be able to compatible with any other external systems. And that's the very problem. The another thing that we observed, the majority of the libraries, that is 70%, are found to be using very few elements. Okay, like here we have listed. And interestingly, that is what I was talking about, the interoperability. That is that for the similar data, different people use different elements, like someone use author, someone use creator, and this basically will make, I mean, it will create problem in terms of interoperability, because your system will fail when there are two different terms are used, because whatever the technology you adopt, it will fail because you have different descriptors in different system. If you have to overcome, then you have to, of course, build more complex system where you need, again, another thesaurus and all, so which would become very complex, right? Now, the second study, which we are talking about, that what these ontology developers, they themselves do. Are they really, while they are publishing their own vocabulary, ontologies, basically the, those are the people that who produce this formal ontologies, are they really publishing the metadata? Are they describing their data while they publish their ontology? And we found that 16% of the ontologies did not use any metadata, and 43% use less than 10 properties. And we found that there are a lot of various issues, like say, for example, like confusion of use in terms of DC or DC term, because you know that there are 15 core elements of DC. Later on, of course, they extended it to again 21. But then there are like DC, there is DC term which consists of, I think, 68 terms plus. Okay, now there is a problem, like you have in DC code terms also DC creator, in DC terms also you have DC T creators. So there is a confusion people always have which one to use. Or they have sometimes also used, this is another ontology that is available, that is SCOS, which is also a kind of standard, that is simple knowledge organization system. It is mainly used for transforming the traditional classification or the thesaurus to as a formal system. Okay, because they are really informal, and to make it machine processable, you need to transform them. And for that, this course was created. And we found that there is always an issue of the confusion. There is always an confusion of the that use of terms from those different vocabularies. And variety of metadata vocabularies that we found, because there is DC, DCT, then there is provenance, because whenever we want to describe, we need the provenance information is very important, as we know that from the database technology point of view also, right? So there is like probe ontology, there is void, and there are many, and schema.org, this is one of the biggest one. Now we can see, and this is, I think, the that for Google, in the last talk I was talking about, that Google has improved like anything. And this, I mean, in a sense of such point of view. And that behind that, this Google knowledge graph stands, and behind that again, this schema.org stands. Because nowadays this Google is actually, because this schema.org is a joint project of this Google, Bing, Yahoo. These are the three major search engines, right? Search engine. So they actually sponsored this project, that schema.org. And this Google actually is using heavily this schema.org, which is also a kind of vocabulary to describe the internet of objects or internet entities. Okay, so there are different metadata vocabularies are there. And we found that in this study, when it comes to the knowledge artifact, majority of the people relied on only this kind of generic purpose of vocabularies or ontologies like Dublin Core or Dublin Core terms, rather than the most specific one, which was basically built to facilitate the description of the knowledge artifacts or the ontologies, and that is that OMV, ontology metadata vocabulary. Okay, and we found that very few people used it, and this is something that came from the people who are pioneer in the semantic web area. Okay, like I think you heard about Rudy Studer, right, from Karlsruhe. And this, interestingly, this one was created in 2005, but people, I think, didn't bother about using this OMB. Rather, they prefer even some small information they wanted to give. They always depended on this Dublin Core kind of generic purpose vocabularies. Metadata vocabularies do not rely on one another, although there is a strong overlap. This is another problem, because say, for example, licensing, right? When you publish anything, whether it's a software code or you want to publish a knowledge artifact, in every case, you need to provide the license, right? And in this case, the problem is that there is a confusion again, because Dublin Core also has its own descriptor like DC license. Similarly, Creative Commons, which also defines or which also provides a descriptor called CC license. This basically denotes the prefix. That means this indicates that who gave this term. So this license came from Dublin Core, and this term came from Creative Commons, CC. Now the thing is that again here is also a confusion, but again you see that if I use DC license and you use CC license, and there is a software application, that agent, okay, which basically looks for some intelligent, some kind of, you want to, you gave a task to achieve some kind of intelligent stuff, and in that case it get confused that which one to actually use, unless until you feed that information, okay, this DC license and CC license refers to the same. So if I have my DC license and the software agent only understands CC license and it looks for it, then what he will do for my object, it will say that he doesn't have any license because I used that DC license to give my license information. Okay. Whereas your software agent only understands CC license. So these are some of the problems that we have in this. I mean, we observed in this study that when the ontology developers, they publish their vocabularies, even if they give a very small piece of information, they are always confused with this kind of multiple vocabularies and their elements. So they are not sure what to use, what not to use. It's because primarily that this actually indicates to the fact that there is a lack of a standard. Okay. So further, we did a kind of study that is on ontology metadata practices. So this is something like we directly wanted to interact with the community, because you know that this, whenever we talk about anything as a standard, the primary condition is it has to be like a kind of standard recommended by some kind of standard body or organization, like it may be the W3C or it may be ISO, or if not that is recommended by those kind of standard bodies, at least it has to be a kind of community driven system. Anything that we want to do, if I build today something and if I want to push it, people may not care about it. People may not will be bothered about that, because people don't just care about your individual stuff. So anything that you want to do, it has to have the kind of consensus or kind of agreement between or among the community, because otherwise it will not be used, because ultimately whatever we create, it is for the use by the community itself, right? So with that goal, so we basically went with that with the goal to answer the following questions, like, do ontology developers actually describe their ontology metadata? Do ontology users rely on or utilize metadata in their use of ontologies? And what are the ways to improve the current situation and make ontologies more fair? So these were the three major, or you can say the research questions that we had to conduct this study. So we wanted to answer for those three questions, and here I provide you just a couple of questions and the result, that what kind of responses that we received from the community. Some cases they are very interesting, some cases just like, for example, here, so what are the main reasons for your interest in ontologies, right? Because here who are all sitting here, I don't know what percentage of people are really interested or bothered, are really bothered about these ontologies. I think people who are basically wants to work in the semantic domain, who really cares about the declarative AI, who wants the kind of to build a system that where they want also to have a kind of knowledge stored somewhere. I think those are the people who will be only interested in ontologies, right? So given that fact, so we wanted to know from the community why they are interested in ontologies. And we found then some cases like use in annotating data and semantic representation of data, which makes sense. To unambiguously present the reality, this also makes sense, right? But this is something, ontologies are cool and we don't know that what exactly this means, right? So but we take it with a positive note and saying that okay, probably they feel that ontology is really good for basically building the declarative or symbolic AI, right? Or they understand the value of the semantics. But there are many answers that we found. We just listed here only some 5-6, but we actually received answers for this particular question. Out of 168 participants, 147 answers we received, and these are only the 6 answers we have just put here. Now there is another question like, how do you search or select an ontology? This is a very basic question, right? At the beginning also you are talking about it. How do I find my ontology? Okay, now we know some of the repositories, right? So is that only way that we find the ontologies, or there are other ways also? Generally the community or the people basically search ontologies, and we found that very interesting thing, that I know the ontologies I want to use. That is 88 responses we received, that means 53% people said that. Then I use ontology libraries or repositories, that is 51%. And I discover ontologies in literature or through my community, and this is like the maximum number of people replied to that, that is 63% said that they find it from the literature. That means this gives a kind of hint that many people probably, even though they are working in the semantic domain, probably they are not aware about this repositories. Or on the other way, it can also happen that whatever they look, they are not either registered or deposited to those existing repositories, because these repositories mostly they don't collect by their own. As a developer, we have to go and register, we have to deposit our ontology there, then only the system get to know about it. This is really a challenge that we will discuss at the end of the presentation. Okay, so I skip that issue right now. Okay, so these are the some of the different answers, like yeah, see, we have some answers also. I build them myself. Okay, so they don't bother, they don't care about whatever already is available. Better they prefer always to build by their own. Or there are also people who ask people who know, who they think that they know, right? We also asked that what are the top 5 things you would like to know when searching and selecting an ontology, right? Because it's something like that, when we look for a research article, I think basically, and we are very much thorough with Google search engines. So that's the reason I'm always taking the example of Google. And we know that all of us know that how we search, right? We put some keyword, sometimes some author name, right? And what we basically want to know, we want that article to get it right. But in case of ontology, this is not exactly the same. In case of ontology, it's a relatively complex object, because by now you know what this ontology basically consists of. Given that it's basically, you can treat it as a kind of complex object, and for that there are many things that as a user who may be an application developer, who may be a researcher, who may be a simply annotator. So depending upon your requirements, your purpose, the way you look for ontologies may change, may vary. So for example, you may, what we found the answer like 141 answers we received, responses we received out of 168 participants, and we found that these are the some of the listed one like known uses. So they wanted to know the examples and associated data sets, the ontology task, that which purpose for which the ontology was originally designed, because this is very important, because otherwise it may not, when you are looking for your application, so you may find that that's not fitting. So you need to know ontology task, the formality level and expressivity. As I said, that it can be even a very lightweight ontology, it can be a kind of semi-formal, or it can be completely an informal, and which may not be useful for your own application, right? Because you want something that to be processed by machine, and the informal one, it won't be useful there, right? So you want to know even that, not only that formal ontology, but you want to know at what level they are. And probably you already know that when we talk about the ontologies, there are different levels of formalities are there in describing or making your ontology formal. It can be like a lightweight, it can be middleweight, it can be heavily formal ontology. So depending upon your application goal, because when you deal with an ontology, and it's very important to know the formality level of your ontology, because depending upon that, because if you are going to handle with a lot of data, and if your ontology is very formal, you are going to kill your system by your own. Okay, because formality level, and if you have the reasoners, because you make your ontology formal, because your reasoners, the inference engine would be drawing the inferences from the data. And if your ontology is very formal and you are dealing with a large amount of data, varieties of data, which is very complex, is your system is really going to die probably. Okay, and it's going to, die in a sense, it's going to take a lot of time. So you need to take a decision at the design level, right? So you need to know that the formality level and the expressivity, you need to know the maintenance, whether this is like how often is it updated or versioned, or the compatibility, the domain, the relations, the quality, which is very difficult to know, right? You cannot really assure the quality of an ontology, is highly difficult, but still people want to know. Then community, then content, and like that there are many aspects they highlighted, and these are the some of the important aspects that we thought that are very important, that when we design a vocabulary for describing, for the description of ontologies, our vocabulary should provide these facilities, so that any ontology developers or the repository developers or the managers, they would be able to describe the ontology from that perspective, so that the ontology become more findable or reusable. Another question we asked, like, how do you choose your ontology metadata vocabularies when describing your ontology? And here again, that 77% of the people use recommendation like W3C or Dublin Core, or the community standard, and 46% look at what has been done in other ontologies or in their community. Only 7% of the people don't really think about it. Okay, so here are the different pointers, like search relevant properties on the web, look at what has been done in other ontologies, and like that. The other question was like, current ontology metadata vocabularies overlap a lot. How do you select between two properties that have the same meaning? Like earlier we talk about like DC license, CC license, or RDFS label, DC title, OMP name, because these are quite same. This RDFS has provided that. This is Dublin Core has provided. This is OMB ontology metadata vocabulary has provided, and they are actually the meaning wise they are same, conceptually they are same. But how do you choose which one to pick up to describe your data? Because you don't surely would spend time giving giving the same title using these three different levels, right? So obviously, how do you decide? And here we found that this the answer is not very clear actually. Yeah, no specific approach to solve this problem of redundancy. As an ontology developer, how do you author ontology metadata? And this is something that I think any of us who are already doing, or maybe from this workshop who gets motivated or inspired in using or building ontologies, they surely need to also know this, right? Because how do you basically author your ontology metadata? So in a sense, so I leverage the ontology properties offered by the repositories. That means when you are submitting an ontology to a repository, whatever elements they give, using that you try to describe, or we add very small amounts of custom metadata, like that different example, that different responses, that as you can see 161 responses we received for this question. So some of these answers are this, and here is one like, this is beyond my level of knowledge, so they just gave up. I put them in an accompanying text file in public or in publications. Some people even said that in publications. Okay, and here you can see even more specific answers with the respective numbers. Okay, now another question was like, would you find it useful to be supported by a tool to author ontology metadata? And 46% people said that yes, they want something that if there is a tool, then it would be easy for them to provide metadata for their own ontology. Okay, now there are many other such questions, but I didn't put, only few I just wanted to put, because there are, I think, another some 15-20 such questions we had. Now the issues that we observed, so there are many metadata vocabularies out there, but majority of them are generic in nature, which I already said. And it is hard to find any of the existing vocabularies covering enough aspects of ontologies to support the new type of queries on ontologies. This is something that, as we saw in this slide, this is very important actually, because this gives, of course, these are only a very few one, but these are the one that which gives some kind of different aspects of an ontology and an object and its search. Because when the search is involved for this kind of objects like knowledge artifacts, when we are looking for knowledge artifacts, what are the various aspects that we can think that people may come from any of those aspects? They may consider any of them or any of those aspects as an access point, right? So given that, so it was like, it is very hard to find any of the existing vocabularies covering enough aspects of these ontologies to support the new type of queries on ontologies. And what are those new type of queries that we will see in the next slide. Before that, so we just would like to say that, so our objective of this research was basically to propose a new generation metadata vocabulary for ontology description and publication. And of course, the agenda is to integrate and harmonize the previous metadata vocabularies rather than adding a new one to the list. So this is something, a kind of, again, a kind of decision making from the design point of view, in a sense. Like, as we said, we complained actually here that there are many such vocabularies are available. So are we going to again add one such vocabulary just for the sake of that we want to become a famous by giving a vocabulary so that people will use, or we really want to help people, we really want to help machine to really help us back? Okay, so in that case what we decided, our one of the major principles that we are going to discuss the other principles of design, I mean as a design principles, but one of the main goal of this or the agenda was that not to create a new one but to integrate and harmonize the previous metadata vocabularies. That means by studying the existing various vocabularies, we wanted to come out with a one that can be used exclusively for describing and publishing for publishing these knowledge artifacts. Only thing is that wherever there is a gap, just we wanted to fill up that gap by creating new elements, by adding new elements to that standard. So here the aim is to, so our aim is to like to facilitate the to find Mr. Right ontology or the semantic artifact or the knowledge artifact that enable communication between user and machine, machine and machine, visualize, ask interesting questions and do analytics. So we give some examples first of the visualizations, interesting questions and analytics, and then we go to the MOD vocabulary. So these are the some of the sample questions that we have. Like for example, you would like to know who are the key contributors in a domain, means from the ontology or the knowledge artifact point of view. How many ontologies are produced by OBO Foundry Group? This basically deals with mostly these biomedical ontologies, and they are becoming very popular. Okay, so it's a basically kind of community, it's a group of people that where a lot of doctors, they join together and they are actually contributing in building these ontologies. Okay, and what are the projects using the for example, you want to also ask that what are the projects using the Codo ontology. So like earlier I was talking about COVID-19 Codo ontology. So it's basically like you want to know that who are the people are using these ontologies, so that you also then by understanding those different projects, you may also decide whether to take a particular ontology for your own project or not. You can decide based upon that, right? For your decision making, this will help you. Now provide the ontologies along with the total number of projects where they are in use, the most popular ontology editing tool. Like that you can ask or say for example, what are the ontologies endorsed by the RDA WHEAT Data Interoperability Group and the National Science Foundation. So you would like to ask like very several type of such kind of questions regarding the ontologies. Okay, this is the kind of that visualization. So when you have so many ontologies, so you would like to see the relationships between the different ontologies that you have within a knowledge base, whether it is inside the knowledge repository knowledge base or your MOD or inside the MOD knowledge base itself. So basically if we have that, we can actually visualize this kind of relationships. We can see the relationships between the related ontologies. For example, here like we created a very small knowledge graph for MOD purpose to test the MOD. And so we had, I think, some only 10 ontologies, and some of them are like here, like gene ontology plus protein ontology. Like that, some of these ontologies we added in our knowledge base, and you can see that we can actually visualize the connections between or across these different ontologies, though they are quite similar, right? They are connected to each other, but how they are connected, so we can actually visualize, provided that we have such kind of knowledge base, okay, which provides the information about the various ontologies. We can also have the analytics like ontologies by group. We can have that ontologies that is produced by or provided by the different groups like wheat group and crop group and so forth. Ontologies by category, we can have that, or we can ontologies count in each data catalog, or ontologies by size, or maybe ontologies in natural language. So you want to know, like in English, how many are there? So, okay, in this agro portal, so we had like 62% in English language, whereas 13% in French, and sorry, 26% in other languages. Licensed used by the ontology, so we can also visualize, right? We can have the analytics like, okay, what are the different licensing are used in sharing those ontologies, and most used tools to build ontologies. So from here also, the some of the the people just who are going to start or who are entering to this field, so for them it would be very useful, so that they know that which is the most popular ontology editing environment that is that is used by the community, or they get to know about that tool which is the most popular one, right? So like here you can see that it displays just some example. Now here we have like format used, so like which one, whether it's in OBO format or it is in UMLS or it's in SCOS or in OWL language. I think you are now familiar with at least with OWL, if not with the others, right? Then ontology types, so there are different types of ontologies: application ontology, domain ontology, upper level, core level, and there are many such kind of ontologies are there, or just simply the terminology. So these are the different types of analytics that we can actually have when we have such kind of knowledge graph or the knowledge base for the ontologies. So in this context, we have actually given all this. So we proposed a metadata vocabulary for describing and publishing. Yeah. Hello. Any question? Okay. So we propose this metadata for ontology description and publication, and these are the some of the design principles that we followed. And I would say that these design principles are not only applicable for this particular work, but these are quite generic in nature, and anytime that we are going to work in a similar area, I think these principles are highly useful. Even if you are going to build an ontology, and that time also you need to follow certain principles if you have decided to reuse. Okay, so here we have, because you know that reuse is one of the main principles that we already mentioned previously. So here we first gave this, so these are in order. So we first gave the emphasis on relevance for describing an ontology. So we wanted to reuse the existing vocabularies to create a MOD vocabulary, but for that we wanted to be quite kind of reserve. I mean, we were quite reserved in terms of that to use only those vocabularies or prefer only those vocabularies which are much more closer to the ontology or knowledge artifacts kind of descriptions, not for something else which have no connection with the knowledge artifacts as such. So that was our first principle or the preference. Then the semantic consistency. This is something very important even when we want to build an ontology, and for that we want to harmonize with the other existing one. We have to be always take care of the semantic consistency, in a sense like if some ontology I'm using, I mean, I'm creating an ontology where I'm going to reuse a class coming from another ontology, and I found that whatever that ontology, whatever the class I use here becomes a kind of conflict with the source ontology, then when they all are connected together as part of this link data move, then there will be an issue. For example, just to clarify, this is little complex in a sense. So for example, we say that disjoint classes. This is one of the very simple example we use here. Say for example, in your ontology, you want to define student and teacher are disjoint, right? But in in the from where you have borrowed the student and ontology, the student and teacher classes, let's say from ontology 1, and you have borrowed those two classes to your ontology. So in that original ontology, these two were not considered as disjoint. So tomorrow the problem will be when we talk about the link data, that is the global web, right? I think you already had that, kind of, because when we talk about the link data, the very idea of this data web is basically to build a web of data, right? That's why we say that it's a data web. Now the thing is that when I publish my stuff and that is already there on the web, now when some other software agent, they integrate all these things and build an application, then in that situation what will happen, that in one place you said these two classes are disjoint, in another place you are saying they are not disjoint, then there will be a conflict. Okay, so this is a very simple and a very simplified example actually, but these are the some of the things we always need to take care of whenever we reuse the existing vocabularies or any ontologies. The another thing is that included in a recommendation, so we wanted to give the emphasis on W3C or Dublin Core recommendations or any community driven efforts, like say for example FOAP. FOAP has very popular, has become very popular because more or less all of us are using nowadays FOAP. Previously we had VCAD. So, and we know that FOAP has become popular because maximum people use it. So it's a community driven now. Okay, lot of people contributed to that, and so these are the things that we wanted to rely on, those kind of vocabularies to reuse rather than some individual created it and just we reuse. We prefer not to reuse that when we have the other options. Then frequency of use, of course, the as found in the study, that survey study we used, I mean we conducted. And then priority to the vocabulary specific for ontologies. Of course, that is one of the major thing, that whichever the vocabularies are more closer to our goal, we always we always give preference, obviously, right? Now these are the different aspects that we have in our ontology, that is intrinsic, description, people, relation, content, community, grouping, date, matrix, provenance. So this I skip. uh, so this MOD, as I said at the beginning, that this MOD actually is an ontology of ontologies. In a sense, the goal was basically to build an object which will consist of several data coming from several such ontologies. So in a sense, so this MOD is designed as a kind of model, as a OWL model, so that if you are a repository developer or manager, or you are just as an individual who wants to collect information about ontologies, you can also use MOD, or if you are a manager, you can also use MOD, because we know that this, given that the various use cases that I discussed previously, so what happens that this MOD, even though we are calling it as a metadata, but this metadata is not just a kind of flat list of descriptors, rather it's basically itself is an ontology that I'm going to show you as a demo later on. Okay, so this itself is an ontology, hence you can actually create the object inside it. Okay, and I will show you that demo. Okay, now this one is that MOD 1.1 that was published in 2015, as I said previously, and we had very minimal number of classes and properties initially, and this is available for access, so anyone can visit that site. And this is also MOD 1.2 was published in 2017, and then MOD 1.4 was published in 2018. Okay, and again this is also accessible from this site. I will show you that also, and also this is available in GitHub. Now, the interesting thing is that given that we have the knowledge base,
the ontology of ontologies at the advanced level.
any question? Okay, I think, okay, fine. So the as I said that, so you know that when you have this ontology of ontologies, that means you are building a knowledge base, so you can ask the questions. So you can have this kind of queries run that like, okay, what are the ontologies endorsed by the RDA weight group, interoperability group, and the National Science Foundation, like that many questions that we also gave some couple of sample questions. So you can ask that questions, you can do such kind of analytics. Okay, so you can do many such things if you have the data inside it. Okay, and now I talk about first very quickly some of the challenges that we faced or still we have, and then I will show you some small demo, basically that I will take you through that ontology, that small ontology that is MOD itself. Okay, so some of the challenges or the future goal, you can say that one is that our goal is like to discuss with the various ontology editors on integration of MOD in the software, because from the study we found that, from the survey study we found that people actually prefer that to provide this metadata while they build the ontology. So that means the editing tool they use for building the ontology, if we have this vocabulary, all the elements are added there, then there is a possibility that people also will fill up the data. Otherwise, it's very hard to get the data. So, but for that, we have to convince these ontology editors like, ontology editing tool developers like Protige or Workbench for the integration of MOD in that editing tool itself, so that people, the real users, the ontology developers, can provide the metadata at the time of building their ontology. Convincing the ontology developers to add or provide metadata besides publishing the ontologies. This is one of the major problems, and that's why whatever the numbers that we saw in the very first slide, that different ontology repositories and the number of ontologies available there, is actually gives a very partial information that cannot be relied upon. We cannot say, does it mean that in given that in bioportal we have some 894 ontologies, does it mean that we have only those many ontologies in the biomedicine area? No, that's not true, because it doesn't include many ontologies that are already out there. Okay, and the major problem is that it's the ontology developers, they always, what we observed, we always found that many of the developers are quite reluctant in providing the metadata. But this is something very important. They need to realize that if they don't provide the data, some data which has to be provided by them only, some of the metadata can be automatically generated by the machine. By processing the ontology, we can automatically extract the data, but some of the metadata information has to come from the developers itself. And if they don't provide, the problem is that next time any other user or any other application developers wants to use that ontology, his or her ontology will not be used, will not be, that the person who wanted to use will not be able to use it, because he will first place he will not be able to find that ontology. That ontology will not be findable. That is the major problem. So we need to convince the ontology developers that if they believe on ontology, if they want to also reuse the ontologies, so they have to also equally feel that it is important that they provide the metadata for their own ontology, so that others can reuse their ontology. In that way, actually, they also will become famous, that they many ontology developers, I think, probably not much aware about it. The another problem that we see, that is what that we are right now working with a European Commission project actually, but we are not, I mean, it's a kind of a different type of partnership. So we are actually working on a kind of recommendation, and there we were also discussing one thing, that that many ontologies are actually available in PDF. In a PDF, in a sense, as a scientific article. In your article, you describe your ontology, probably by providing some glimpses, but you don't publish your ontology as a OWL file or even as an Excel file. Forget about as a OWL file, as a formal ontology. Even as an Excel file also, it's very hard to find, right? And this is what that we need to find out the solution, and this is something really a challenge to bring everyone under one roof or under one single umbrella, right? So this is one of the challenges that we have, and we are actually doing such kind of work, that where we are trying to reach people and trying to tell them, trying to make them aware that they need to provide. So we are actually involving the community in this study to fix some of the critical issues. So we have the other critical issues, that is like say versioning control. This is one of the major issues that we every time we hear from the community, and last couple of years we are hearing that, and we don't have a very perfect solution for this version control yet, but yes, we are working in that. So this is one of the thing, because what happens, this is ontology is something that you create today, and then maybe after sometimes you will change, because that language is evolving. So for that domain ontology or application ontology, whatever you build, probably they are also different terms, different concepts are actually evolving over time, right? And you have to add that. So in this case of also this that means when every time you come across with some new words, new things, or maybe some other changes you make, or maybe some words you want to replace, all these things you do, so you may publish it as a different version. Okay. And controlling, I mean, having a proper information about that, like for software we do, right? We have alpha, beta, we have version x point, x point o, and like that we have multiple versions, right? So in case of ontology also is the same case. So this is something that is still is an issue. And then what we didn't do yet, that is a kind of some extent, of course, we very recently we did, but not yet published, that is a kind of abstraction versus manifestation. So in a sense, that the whole idea of this ontology, how it is how it stands from an abstract point of view, and how when we really create that ontology, which is like a kind of a digital object, okay, which is really something that which I can see on my computer screen. When we have that, and it includes or it involves multiple aspects, it's a kind of distribution. You have many distributions you can have in various formats, different contributors, different language. So it's basically it involves many things. So we need to have a kind of differentiation between this abstraction and manifestation, so which is another issue that we have to yet to resolve in our future version. Data integration, this is one of the major challenges again from the knowledge graph developing point of view, knowledge graph development point of view. This is similar like last time I discussed about this COVID-19 data integration. But here, of course, we are not talking about COVID-19 data integration. We are talking about the ontology related data integration. And the problem is that at least in case of COVID-19, no, so that whatever data is available, at least that is available in some format, whether it is in PDF or Excel, so we can transform, and data is there some extent. But in ontology, as from the previous slides you saw, that many cases people don't provide the data. So given that situation, when there is no data and I myself cannot develop that, I mean I cannot create that data, some of those data, because I'm not the actual developer of that ontology, and then how I can add some information about that ontology my own. It has to come from the developers. Now the thing is that there are some information which we can consider that, okay, that is developers have to provide, but there are some information that not necessary it has to be provided by the developers, because if you ask the developers to add hundreds of data, they will run away. They will not add, they will not even give a single piece of data to you. Okay, so we have to understand that also. So we need to have a balance, right balance between that, how much the developers should give and how much we ourselves find it. We ourselves find it in a sense whether we can generate automatically using the computer, or we can also scroll, we can extract the data by looking at the different sources related to that project, but it has to come again automatically. So here is the major challenge, that automatizing the process of creating this ontology instances from ontology libraries, or from any such other information, that is like transforming the metadata available in individual ontologies to ontology metadata knowledge base. So these are really the challenge, because there are, you know, we have in our ontology also the nested data format, right? So when it comes, the nesting comes, the integration becomes even much more complex. Like say for example, I just give one example, like I want to add information about the contact person of that ontology. Now contact person is just the name, you get it from the developer, but that is not sufficient, because that's just a string to your system. But you need to, you may decide to transform it as an entity, and that is what MOD does. Actually MOD tells that you should treat it as an entity. Now if you treat it as an entity, you want to further know about that person, his email ID, his web page address, or you want to know other related information which may be useful, or maybe you want to find out, okay, this person is involved in what are the other ontology projects. So you want to extract those information to enrich your knowledge base, because so that you can do more advanced analytics, right? Centering to these ontologies. And if you want to do all these things, that really becomes a real challenge. And I think there are multiple such issues that we have, that we yet to solve. We have a lot of such ready-made issues are there, that there are many people can actually work towards those issues. Then of course that our goal is also this ontology service, to such as a like recommendation system, that which we a couple of years ago we thought of by now we would build, but we could not build so far because of several reasons. Again, this is the direction that we have. So we already know up to this, and now this is like a community standard. So we are trying to, some extent we achieved, but still it is not fully achieved. That's why we are saying that undergoing effort, though we marked it by 2020, we should build MOD, publish it as a community standard, but we are still under that process, as I explained few minutes ago also. And then is that goal is also to to make it as a DCAT compliant, because DCAT has become a like a de facto standard, and of course it's also a W3C recommended standard. So it's a kind of standard that is like everybody is using for describing their data, right? So since we are considering knowledge artifact, basically the semantic artifact, as a also a kind of data, so you want to have a compliant, or we want to also map this with this DCAT. Okay, and that's the work that is right now we have, already is done. Again, it's yet to be formally declared or published, so it's not yet. So yeah, conclusion. So the thing is that there are of course we highlighted here only the FAIR 12, that is metadata use vocabularies that follow the FAIR principle. So this is one of the emphasis that justifies the significance of MOD metadata. However, there are other principles that also we need to follow, and we need a standard way to describe semantic resources, and we need this to be adopted and shared by ontology stakeholders. And don't reinvent the wheel, which is the one that so far I tried to communicate that whenever we build, this is we are talking about MOD, for describing the ontologies itself. But even if you are building an ontologies, we should always remember, we should always try to not to create our own, or not to reinvent the wheel by our own, rather than we should try to reuse whatever already available. Okay. And also a collaborative approach is required, because like here in our case, so as I said that like RDA, then maybe a W3C recommendation, then only probably we can achieve that what we said as part of the interoperability, as part of the FAIR, that is interoperability, right? FAIR. So this is what can happen only when it becomes a kind of recommendation promoted by maybe some of these bodies like RDA or W3C recommendation. And we are actually somewhere here right now, and hope sooner in the future would be able to make it as a W3C, but it's still it's out of our reach. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, this is an open project, so you can access from GitHub page, or you can also see, you can access this also from ResearchGate. You can get the update from ResearchGate as well. And these are some of the publications that we have so far centering to this work. And yeah, and that's it. Okay, so if you have any question, you can ask me. Otherwise, I will take you through that small ontology, that MOD vocabulary itself, and also show you maybe a couple of queries running there.
Bismal sir, could you repeat upon which are the available metadata ontologies like the one you are creating, similar to MOD?
Okay. Okay, so one is that we said that very close to that is ontology metadata vocabulary, OMV. But the bad thing, bad information, bad thing about it is that it was developed in 2005, and in 2009 the last editing was done. But after that, actually there is no news, even, which is very important in for the success of the linked data, that is dereferenceable URI. That means you should have a resolvable URI. Unfortunately, the elements from OMB are not resolvable anymore, because that vocabulary is no more maintained. So, but other than that, the close other you can say like prob, which is again not exactly made for ontology, but it's basically for probe, but you can partially use it. Then we have this void. Okay. And then another one which is not here in this list, that is VOP. Okay, vocabulary that is kind of friend of a vocabulary or something like that. It's similar like FOB of a friend of a friend. FOB, it's similar like friend of a vocabulary. Okay. Other than that, let me see, where is that list? I thought that that list is here. Unfortunately, I think I missed that slide. I think, yeah, mistakenly maybe I have deleted that slide. but I can
Yeah,
do
I
one
got
thing.
the idea.
I can do one thing. I can show it from here so that you can still see that who are the the one that we used. Maybe let me. You can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, just let me otherwise go through this. Yeah, I was talking about this VOP, okay, which also we also have partially used it, and then yeah, DOPE. This is another, again, it is also not maintained in the recent time. Okay, this has also become kind of old one. People are not using that. Then there is VAN, okay, and probe, of course, I said about it. Then DOOR. Yeah, sorry, I said wrong. So DOOR is not maintained properly now anymore, but DOPE is still maintained. Okay, yeah. So these are the some of the the vocabularies that we have used. But other than that, as we said in one of the slides, that 23 vocabularies we have actually evaluated, and that list, if you give me a second, then I can show you. Just give me a second. I don't know how that slide got deleted. Uh, I hope. Sometimes I upload here, sometimes I forget. Miyamo. Where is, I think this is the one. Yeah. So here you can find that study of this 23 vocabularies that we studied. This is actually the most frequent used vocabularies over a corpus of 222 ontologies. So this is not the, this is just gives you the number. Now if you look at here, so this is, here we have the 23 vocabularies. As you can see here, 23 vocabularies. Of them we have used only 12. Okay, and this consists of the most updated list of all the related vocabularies that can be used for describing these ontologies. Okay, so our study, that MOD, whatever we are saying, that it's basically out of these 23, after thoroughly evaluating them, we finally found only 12 to be used, and partially some of their elements that we have added to our vocabulary, and which is, again, from here you can clearly see that who are the and which element from which vocabulary has come. Right here probe, and like here schema, like here again FOP, DCT, and those are our own, that is MOD. So this gives a complete picture of that how many different elements are used from the different vocabularies. Okay, so I can share this link. You can maybe, sorry. Any other question? Otherwise, okay. Any question? Okay. So in that case, just if there are no question, then I will quickly, since we have some time, so I will quickly take you through this MOD itself. So this is a like a small set of classes that we have to manage this, the ontology and information, and this is basically again 1.2.19, but let me open the latest one. That is 1.4. That is the last one, not latest one. Just a second. Do I have 1.4 here? No. Okay. So better I show it from there. Okay. So this is 1.4. So we can actually, if we wish, we can download it. Okay. And sorry. And let me download here. Okay. And yeah. So this actually has a little more number of classes because we have expanded it further. And this gives the complete list of the different vocabularies that oh, there is something wrong here. I don't know, something is wrong anyway. Yeah, these are the set of classes and all. But for running the queries, I would prefer to go to the previous version because I have the data set here, because as you can see here, let me see here. Yeah. So we have like a couple of ontologies already added, and we have the data about it. And this data creation, as I was talking about the challenge, okay, where I think some of you may work on this aspect, this getting this data into the system is really a challenge. Basically, not that if the data is in Excel, I showed you in the part 1 presentation that how to do that. That's relatively easy actually. But when data is somewhere else and you don't know what are the different sources are there, and getting the data from such various sources, accumulating them, putting them in one place, it's really is a big challenge. And to be honest, this data, whatever you are seeing here, which we did a couple of 2018, you can see that manually I had to add this data, because most of the data I had to collect from different websites, and this piece of information we had to collect. So multiple pieces we had to bring, and then we had to put in one place, right? So it was not so easy, and this takes a huge amount of time. And that is the reason that I said during the presentation that people should, I mean the ontology developers should provide the maximum data, and some of the data anyway software does automatically, so we can get some of the data by its own, and some of the data the ontology repository managers, they can further add into that, okay, which the ontology developers may not be able to do that, or may not do that, but they can do anyway. So like that, we created a kind of a small knowledge base consisting of, as you can see here, that multiple ontologies we added, say for example gene ontology, and we have lot of data you can see here about gene ontology, okay. And given that, if you have the queries, like say for example some of the queries we have uploaded in our GitHub project page already here. So here we have this project here, okay, and you can see this multiple links are provided even for RDA vocabulary link, and every links are here. So if you want, so here we have the SPARQL queries, and that is what one of them I have just copied here. Here, and so here let us see the query first. So list the existing ontologies along with their subject wherever applicable. So that's the SPARQL query, and we have like this result like here, as you can see. So we get this, or say for example, if we want, let us try with the second one. Some query may not work also because the versions we changed, small changes we made, and we didn't maintain the version for that. So we may find not working there. So what was the idea here? So list all the MOD defined properties and their corresponding domain and range restrictions. So this provides the all the properties that we have and their domain and range. Okay. I don't know whether other queries will run. So let me try with one more. I think. It's working. Okay, good. So here, what was the idea? So list the existing ontologies with their properties and their corresponding values. Okay, not very interesting. So it's basically all the ontologies and their corresponding properties and their values, as you can see, like for agro, then you have all their properties for this, and like that we have protein ontology and gene ontology, and also I mean, of course we can filter out also with a particular ontology. So like that, there are a couple of queries we have given here. So anyone can just download these versions like 1.2.3, and then if they run that queries, because this is compatible with 1.2.3, so expected that those queries will run. Okay. And yeah, what else? So I think, yeah, so I think we are done with some time. Yeah, it's we have almost like some 15 minutes time still. So if you have any question you want to see from me, just let me know. Otherwise, for this, I think I'm done.
Very thanks for that. If the audience has something to ask right now, please go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you. So I'm quite new to this ontology thing, but I have heard the terms like the mining of the ontology, or so what could be the meaning or the purpose of mining this ontology stuff? Or I have seen people applying ML techniques even on the
Right.
code.
Yeah. So the thing is that here, you know that because mining in general, we understand each of us, right? So the question is that it's similar like that when we talk about the mining ontologies, it's not just about the finding the entire ontology, rather the very specific thing within an ontology. In a sense, say for example, right now, as I said that let's say we are working on COVID-19 ontology, right? And also the progress that I didn't share in the last this one, that we are also working on harmonization. That means in a sense like some 7 such ontology developers which are working in different COVID related ontologies, okay, across the world. We have decided to join together, but we will be building our own ontology our independently, as we were doing. We will be doing that, but we want to join together. That means we will reuse for the sake of interoperability. Again, that interoperability always comes into that picture, basically the semantic interoperability we are talking about. Now this mining comes into this picture basically that when I say, for example, I have in my ontology, say a term called symptom, which is a very common thing, right? Now this symptom, whether it's something already there in other existing vocabularies, there are multiple such vocabularies are actually there, like one is that OBO foundry that I was talking about, right? There it is there. Then Chevy is there. Like that, there are different biomedical ontologies. If we look there, it's possible that even Snowbed City is there, right? Mace is there. There are different such ontologies are available, that where this term symptom has been defined. Now the thing is that when it comes to create that same concept in my ontology, how do I do it? How do I look for it? Whether something is already available. So these are the some of the, I mean, one of the possible ways that where we can actually apply, given a kind of specific, of course you can have a kind of, depending upon what type of learning you are actually going to apply, right? Whether supervised, unsupervised, or it's a kind of, administered kind of, like where you want to, I mean basically kind of semi learning technique you want to use. So depending upon the situation that what you want to use, on that perspective you can think of it. There is another possibility of this applying this ML technology here, that which I see very much. Even in the last presentation also I spoke about it. The for helping the ontology in terms of maintaining, and in terms of helping building or maintaining the knowledge graph. So helping or maintaining or building in two levels. One is at the ontology level. That means, let's say I say, for example, I was talking about the versioning, right? So I'm keep developing it, right? Now everything we are doing manually, any terms that we are adding manually, only things that data when we are adding we are doing automatically. But that's not a machine learning technology. We are simple programming language we are applying there, right? But we can actually leverage this by applying ML technology, that where we can deploy it for maintaining it. And when I talk about the maintenance, we can actually talk about this mining different ontologies, look what is available, others, and if bring it inside, and uh, improve the existing the ontology that I am creating, okay, or improve the
But sir,
knowledge graph that I'm creating.
sir, but then for this we do have query language, SparkQL. In the previous session, I heard this term.
Mhm.
I view it like, say, probably it could be similar to the SQL thing.
Yeah,
So
SparkQL is quite similar to SQL syntactically, yes.
So, I mean, where do we smell that optimization kind of the thing so that people are using the machine learning technique in the ontology mining? Because
Okay,
we have to have some sense of the optimization thing to apply the ML techniques.
right. So this is SparkQL basically, as you very rightly said, this SQL is, we know that it's basically, it's a database query language, right? RDBMS database query language. Now SparkQL, we say that it's a basically a protocol, as well as it is also a query language for RDF database, right? I mean knowledge base. We don't use the word database anymore. We use the term knowledge base. Because of that, we are dealing with the knowledge and many other things that I'm not getting into that. Now this SparkQL basically we can apply for querying the knowledge base, right? Or say, for example, I was talking about the accessibility, which is also we are going to use it for querying the knowledge base, but we can do the remote access in a sense. That SparkQL endpoint I was talking about, right? So that SparkQL endpoint that I have, and I want to give, I want to fetch data from other data sources. So what I can do, just I can send a query in a federated environment basically, and I can get the data, I can fetch the data to my system or to my application or whatever you say, right? Now when you talk about the what I was talking about, that basically the enhancement, enrichment, okay, where you talk about enrichment, it's, you know, that it's basically okay, let me put it little in a more way that we are practicing. Say for example, in COVID ontology, that Kodo that I'm keep referring, because we are developing it. Now what we do basically there, it's more, I have taken that more as a data driven approach. So I observe the different data, that how people are publishing here and there. I am seeing keep since last year, right? And depending upon the kind of data that I am observing, I am keep adding the terms to enable my system, my ontology, to represent that kind of data. Because my goal is not to fetch the data that whatever is available in different websites and to put it in my system. That's not my goal. My goal is basically to build a kind of representation model, a semantic data model, so that if tomorrow any hospital wants to do analytics on top of their data, or they want to represent their data for this kind of reasons, they can simply take my model and feed their data into the system. Or any other hospital, for the similar cases, they can also take the ontology, they have their own data, they feed the data, they get it done. Now the thing is that now you see, this is not an one time development, right? Because as I'm keep telling that this is a knowledge artifact, that it evolves over time, it will be evolving, there is no doubt about it. Now since it keeps evolving, so the thing is that we need to bring new thing, and also depending upon our learning, we may need to change even our the data model, the way today I model it, given that knowledge that I gained from the data or from the domain. I modeled my model accordingly. My representation model I created. But tomorrow, looking at the other aspects of the data, other different types of data, I may find, oh, this is something is I have to do it in a relatively different way, and for this I need these other components, right? So here is the one that again, whether we can actually have a large scale of such data, I mean literature, basically I will say literature, and whether machine can automatically can provide me a kind of recommendation. In a sense, recommendation means here as a kind of model, whether it can help me to build a kind of model by its own. And of course, I always believe on semi-automatic approach. So as a human being, I can interfere into that. So here is the thing, that when we do this, this is like a very we have to take a kind of accumulative approach. We have to take a kind of joined approach, in a sense that we cannot just rely only on the literature. It's impossible, right? We need to look at the other existing models as well, whatever is there out there, that similar kind of things people are doing, but they are different, ours is different. That is where we exist, right? So in these kind of cases, that where we can actually deploy this ML technology, supervised or unsupervised or whatever you want, how we can deploy that, which can help me to further enrich my knowledge model. And this is just an example. The second example, one more example I give, and then I stop. That is from the data point of view, from the graph point of view, that the graph that we are building right now is the thing is that we are selecting by our own and adding the data, right? And we are building the intermediary process, all the software codes we are creating and fetching the data and creating the graph. Whether we can deploy again here also the machine learning technologies, and this is not necessarily the ontology mining as such, the one that basically you are saying. The previous example what I gave, number one, that is basically the mining. The second, this one I'm saying in general, that whether we can apply the ML technology, okay, for this purpose, whether we can deploy it. So there are many machine learning problems are there in context of semantic web area, that where we can actually bring that here and we can get benefited out of it. So it's basically like a kind of kind of converging we are trying to achieve like that, so that we can bring these two and get the maximum out of it. And in fact, we also have started, my student also is there, I think she is also presenting today's lecture. So one of them actually is working even in that ML side of that, because that's where that, I mean, we just started, of course, that how this Kodo can be benefited from this by deploying this machine learning techniques. And here, not necessarily that we are going to restrict ourselves only to ontology mining. Okay, because I think, madam, you have a session on ontology learning, right? I think tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Tomorrow you have an
It's
ontology learning.
Raghava's student.
Yeah, okay. So what I was talking about, that, first case, that's basically that I was talking about the ontology learning. Say, for example, in a case that where that converging that I was talking about, like harmonization, right? So if I have to, from all this set of ontologies, if I have to create a new piece of ontology for my own application, because my application goal, your application goal would be sure, I mean, expected that 99% cases are different, right? But whether I can use or reuse some of the existing ontologies and I build only a small part that where I need for my own application sake. So in that case is the thing that where you have a lot of ontologies, your system learns that those ontologies and prune it. That's basically the pruning technology is very common technology that we use when it comes to the ontology learning or creating a new ontology out of the existing ontologies. So this ontology pruning actually is very important in this context, that where actually that you need, I think, this machine learning. And there are a lot of work actually has been done in the last 2 decades, not now, actually since I think 2001 2002 on ontology learning, many people are working. And I don't think that they could achieve a very good success. I mean, success rate always is very bad, but still, yeah, people are working. I mean, I'm also working in that now, slowly started. But the thing is that, yeah, that is one the area that where actually you can mine the different ontologies and then you can build. So that's basically come under the area of ontology learning, okay, which you have this dedicated session only on ontology learning, right.
Thank you very much, sir, for such a
Yeah.
detailed answer.
Thank you.
Mr.
Thank you
Pankaj,
for
was it okay? Pankaj Goel?
Yes, ma'am. I'm here. I got disconnected for a while. I don't know how and why, but then I rejoined and then I picked up his wordings. That uh, that was the case actually.
Okay,
Am I audible?
yeah, you're audible. I just briefed that he's saying it is, yes, it is new and the hybrid is to come. People are not able to get much success, but lot of work is going on in this direction. And this will be the future, at least all the industry will be using these approaches, and ML has to be there. We cannot forget the learning
yes.
part. We cannot forget it. So it is to
Yeah.
be there.
Yeah, it
Yes,
should
ma'am.
be
I will
act like an assistive system, because as I was giving that example of that Kodo, because it's like I as an individual, I have to go through all of them manually, find out which is more close to that, whether we can replace, I mean, myself at least some extent, or it can help me out some extent, then that would be actually, that will help me to produce the thing much faster than what I can do manually, by checking each of those resources and then making that model, because it's really a very cumbersome job and it's very time taking job. And so machine learning, yes, this is one of the technologies that we cannot forget about it. We should take the advantage of it. Yes, I agree with that.
right, sir. Thank you.
Are there any queries from the speaker? Okay, for me, Vishnath sir, this lecture was something like, means yes, it was metadata for the ontologies, but most of the part was also feeding how to create an ontology also. So people building the ontologies will definitely benefit from this talk.
Yeah, I intentionally tried to give that emphasis because I know that only metadata may not help, but we should look at the purpose, the very objective of that, why we are talking about it, because this is something that where lot of European projects are actually there, millions of euros they are spending on only this, because of the very much reason is that, because if we have to you know see the success of this semantic things, whatever we are talking, or ontology, this is one of the important thing, because the entire if you look at the semantic web, it's a metadata data model, it's nothing but the metadata. So metadata is in the core of the semantics, you cannot avoid that. So anything you talk, you need the metadata, that's the important. So yeah,
True, that is true. I can see your this mode project is also with Clement.
this project is with him. Yes, initially, yes, that's what I gave, that historical map that where we started in, but then
I can see.
he is the manager of AgroPortal, and he said that can we join, and then
AgroPortal he has started after
Yeah,
BioPortal. Actually, he was in with Mark Hussain.
he was doing BioPortal, and then he said that can we join, because I have the portal and you are working on metadata, can we just join?
Yes.
And so now
Yes.
AgroPortal in the backend they are using MOD partially, so it's already there. So it's already
that is
there.
so good.
It's
And
implemented.
really, they have lot many postdoc positions always open. I have found that I've seen, means people
Yeah.
are at our place in our country, people are looking for postdoc, and really, if they work in this direction, lot many postdoc positions are open outside.
True. In Europe, lot of postdoc,
In Europe, at least.
PhD and postdoc both are actually.
PhD also. True.
Yeah, a lot of positions are there actually. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks for the nice talk. Thanks for being here.
Thank you
It's
very
now
much.
2 hours or more than that even you have been speaking.
Thank you very much for the invitation once again. Thanks a lot. Okay, so and thank you all for your time. And if you
Thank you
have
very
any
much.
question, you can always reach to me. Okay, so anytime you wish, you can contact madam, or you can directly contact me if you have any doubt or any questions. Okay, so
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Bye bye. Have a nice day.
Okay, bye.
Bye.